Hi all, I've been playing a lot of Gears of War Tactics at the moment. I have to say it's absolutely amazing. It's as good as XCOM 2. It's just a very different type of strategy. Now, the first thing I'll talk about is the strategy layer, which is quite a bit pared back compared to XCOM. As I said, it's a more fast-paced game, and there's not as much in the planning stages that you kind of might expect with the style of game that this is. So, when you play the missions, one thing to look out for is the cases. The secondary objectives are quite often time-based, and it's very hard to hit those. So if you do find that you haven't hit those, then the only thing you'll get is some minor reinforcements in the mission. So it's worth going back and getting as many of these cases as you can, because each one that you open will give you some armor and some benefits that you've got, and you can quickly open all of them through. You can also recruit troops, which at the moment I've been using the main characters. Sometimes they're banned in certain missions, but I've just been skilling these ones up. These heroes can't die, especially when you're essentially, like, if they do well, they can die within the game, but if they do die, then you have to restart the mission. So your heroes that you've got, I mean, there's a limitation playing with them, but generally their abilities and their health seem to be quite high at the start, so I certainly recommend you start playing with those ones. Troops that you do unlock, you get those on missions, and you get them as you progress through the game. Those ones are more customizable. They're more like what you'd expect with XCOM, and you can tailor those to your liking a little bit more, but a lot of their abilities tend to just be copied and pasted across from your other heroes. Other things that you can do in the barracks, which again is quite limited, is you want to make sure that you've got your weapons. Just make sure that if it's got a little red icon next to it, that you've got everything that can possibly be equipped. Now, sometimes with this little red tag that you get coming up, like for example here, some of these ones that you've got might already be equipped to other people. So if they're equipped to others, in use will come up, and if you do that, it will take it away from another character, and it'll probably tell you which one you're using, especially if you take it off, so that you know that you haven't taken that away from somebody you're going to then move in your actual squad you're going to pick. So you want to make sure that you've equipped every single possible upgrade that you've got, and just have a look at the benefits. There's no point going into a lot of detail with this really. This one's factory model with the base stats. If I do this, it'll take it away from this character. I'm not currently using him, so I'll swap with that, and it gives my character Gabe the accuracy bonus. You want to make sure the characters you're going in with have that. In XCOM, you could click the remove from all or make all items available. In this one, it just tells you where they are. And I'm aware that I'm referencing XCOM quite a lot, but I imagine that people picking this up will be familiar with it. If not, well, it's a very similar process, so a lot of these things overlap, and then the rest of it's just cosmetics. That pretty much takes you to the end of the strategy layer, and after that you're ready to move on to your missions. Now, in your missions, when you get into certain acts, these ones are the ones that progress the game. In between that, you'll then get side missions. There'll be a range of side missions you can pick from. They'll have different modifiers and changes that will be applied to them, and you need to pick the one that's more appropriate. If you've run out of troops, then pick one that gives you troops. Just look at the objectives and just decide which ones you do. You can't really mess those ones up. Okay, so now you want to start a mission. So one of the things you need to consider with the normal missions, which we're going to look at first of all, is to make sure that we've got our squad set up ready. Now, you'll see that there are a range of classes: support, vanguards and snipers. Now, I really like the vanguards at the moment because of some of their passive skills and their abilities. The sniper is kind of a no-brainer for me because of the long-range Overwatch, which is very important in this game. I've gone to vanguards just because I like my hero classes, but what you might also want to consider is the heavy class, which comes with essentially what the Mulcher, I think it's called in the other games, which can lay down some serious fire and requires smaller amount of reloading, and especially if you don't move the character, then they can certainly put a lot of heavy fire down. I'll do an in-depth guide with each of the types of character separately because it takes me quite a while to do that. So when you load up your missions, it'll usually give you some squad requirements, which will tell you who you do need to bring with you. Quite often it'll be a range of the heroes, which I've been sticking with quite a lot actually. I've been liking bringing 2 of these vanguards. This one is a pre-order bonus, Coltrane, who's a really good vanguard with really high health, which is why I take them because I kind of like tanking it. You want to make sure you have a support class, which you probably always will because you'll probably have to take Gabe, and definitely want a sniper. One of the other things you need to consider is to make sure you've got a stim grenade as well as the frag grenades. I've gone 3 to 1 because the frag grenades are extremely important, and they do have a reasonably high number of rounds to cool down, so it's about 4 or 5 to cool those down, especially if you've got emergence holes, because you can close those a lot quicker, but we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Okay, so we'll deploy and we'll have a look at the mission next. Okay, so a few things we need to just talk about before we go into any more detail is reading the game screen. So when you target an enemy, it'll come up with this TACCOM. I just leave it on. I don't actually see any reason not to leave the TACCOM on. It just clutters your screen up a bit, but it's a real-time strategy or a turn-based game, whichever one they class it as, so you might as well leave it on. Now, it tells you the reasons why you've got your hit calculation, which can be quite useful. Base hit is the idea that if you shoot, you'll hit it, and these are the modifiers that change that. So this guy is a little bit far for a Lancer, so you've got a -17. He's got an obstruction, which classes the cover or objects that are in the way, and his stats for avoiding that are there as well. Got my my crit chance, sorry, and my overall hit chance is then determined based on that. And if I now take a shot on that character, then it will be based on that. I've got a 45% chance of hitting, and if I do hit it, I've got a 25% crit chance. It'll tell me the damage that I could do to it, so you can potentially see that. It's always the base damage that you'll get applied to it, so consider that when you are taking a shot on the characters. Now, the white lines tell you where your potential shots are, and so I know that I've got 4 potential targets here from this current position. Some of the things that are quite good with it is that as you move, it'll tell you and it'll tweak those and it will update you in real time, so there's less information being lost as there might be in some of the other similar games. If you are looking for targeting them, you can just click directly on them, or the actual individual characters are listed up at the top, so you can see those as well. Yours are listed on the side, and your ×3 is your action points that you all get, which is a base of ×3 unless there are modifiers included. So having a shot first doesn't stop you from doing additional actions, it just counts however much your action cost is for each individual one. Some of the moves do have additional action costs, so just keep your eye on it and get familiar with it. Changing weapons, changes to your grenades doesn't cost you anything, so you can always switch over and then just have a look at the TACCOM and see what the different chances of hitting would be there. Quite often you'll find the pistol has a higher chance of hitting. It doesn't really gel in my brain, but I guess it's how it works in the universe of Gears. Another one with grenades. If you are to throw a grenade, you can make it so that the grenades overlap enemies sometimes. Cover isn't as destructible as it would be in things like XCOM, but you can see that your positioning of your grenade actually increases the chance of damage. So it's up to you whether or not, if you're positioning 2 in between it who can't quite reach these, you can see the effect and the spread of the damage, so you can use that a little bit more to give you some information, and that will be the damage that's applied to that. So if you look at some of the abilities that really change up how this game plays, first of all is the execution. So I've knocked this guy down. Now it's going to take me 2 out of my 3 action points to destroy this enemy. But by doing it, all my characters now gain an additional action point. So you can be way more aggressive. Now I've just got a passive point there, which has healed my character. I could choose to move this one, but it's probably worth now having some attacks with my character before, Sid, who'd run out, who's now regained an action point. If you look at these have gained 4 more. Now, I'd probably go on to attack these of us playing, but I want to show you Overwatch. Overwatch is essential in this game. I wasn't expecting it to be such a big deal, and I've been playing the XCOM Chimera Squad a lot recently, where Overwatch has kind of taken a seat back a little bit. So Overwatch in this is really, really useful, and it's really fine-tunable. You can change your cone of fire so that you can push it out to the radius of your gun's effective range, or you can keep it close. Now the closer they are, the more likely you are to connect a shot with them. there are also other layers to this. So if I'm going to use this character here, which I'm not saying this is a good strategy here, I just want to reiterate, I just want to show you how the Overwatch works. You can see that in the lines, the solid blue is where I'm guaranteed to get a better hit. Where I've kind of got a wave pattern shows the disruption from the objects, so any enemies running in that section will be less likely to be damaged. So you want to think about positioning your shots so that they are more usable and covering more of this darker, well, solid blue area. Now if I want to protect Sid from this character up here, that's not going to be a very effective shot. So what might be more useful is to put it across the middle here in case anyone flanks and pushes. With Sid, I can then choose to use my cone to cover the left. Now if I was to cover over here, that's an overlapping area of fire, and we both be firing heavily into that section. If we know that the enemies are going to come there, then it's really useful to overlap those cones of Overwatch fire. I can't guarantee that, so we'd want to make sure that we've got this along the side. And you can see this cone of fire here is solid blue. If that enemy did decide to push, they'd only take one burst of fire from Sid, because he only has one action point. This character, I think that one was Gabe. So that character there has the ability to fire 4 times because he hasn't moved or used any action points. So that means if this character moved in here, he'd get a shot, he might get another shot, this one might get shot at, and if that one did move over, they get shot at up until 4 points. Don't get caught out though by the fact that your ammunition count might be depleted below it, so pay attention to that, because there's no point putting an Overwatch on for 4 when you've only got 2 shots in your gun. You might as well reload it and then you can do something else and then put your Overwatch on. Different weapons have different cones of fire, so you'll find that the sniper here, who's got no action points so I can't show you anything, so I put her Overwatch on, has a narrower cone of fire. So you have to be aware of that for different ranges, and obviously the sniper will go further than those ones will do as well. Now enemy Overwatch has been applied to me here. I've just kind of just had the turn just to show you the difference on this. If I was to move this character, which I will do just to show you the effect of it, it's probably not going to be the end of the world because he's in a bit of cover. But if I move him here, it'll flash up red to show me that I'm going to get hit by Overwatch. It looks like I might get hit by Overwatch from multiple. And there's a reduction of damage, but I'm injured by that. Now, if you're doing an attack, so if I was going to shoot at that character, it would interrupt my attack and my attack wouldn't count at all. It also works the other way around, so if they're in your blue cones of Overwatch, you will interrupt their attacks. So I've taken damage and I've lost an action point just by moving that small amount of distance. Now, I'll show you the grenades as well. The grenade radius, really useful to try and position them and see what you can get out of it. It's kind of, I'll almost say, an art. This one simplifies it a little bit so it's easier to see where you can see that damage. We've got a downed enemy here, so it wouldn't necessarily be a good idea to try and kill him straight away. We can throw our grenade in and we'll take 2 of those out. The reality is you probably want to take your character in, execute one of those, and then you can move along onto those ones. So be aware of the enemy interrupts based on that, because they can stop your attacks from actually working. Now I've used my grenade now and it's going to take a lot of goes in order to recover that, so please just be aware that if you use your grenades, if an emergence hole opens, you're not going to be able to close it easier, and if you're in a large firefight, that means that you're going to be watching more sections than others. One of the final things I'll say is the enemies are hyper aggressive in terms of flanking. They push you very hard in this game, and they will try and find as many sections to get around you as possible. So just because there's a gap over to, let's say, the right of here, which there isn't in this section, but if there is, there's nothing saying that this enemy won't rush around and try and attack you from behind. They're really aggressive, and that's because the game is trying to push you to go forward as much as possible. So the aim of this is to move forward and hit as hard as you can. One final thing I'll say regarding Overwatch, as you do have a disabling shot. This is shown to you in the tutorial, so I won't spend much time on it, but it's always worth remembering that you can fire a disabling shot to essentially turn off that Overwatch. If you hit and damage these enemies, it's not necessarily going to guarantee that you're going to get rid of that Overwatch. Also, I find the disabling shots kind of crap, to be fairly honest, so I tend to go on the offensive, or if I'm under very heavy Overwatch, set down some cones of cover so that when an enemy does try and advance, they get cut in half. Now, the last kind of hint and tip I'll point out with it is it's worth hovering your mouse or your controller over the enemies just to see what they are. Wretches are pretty straightforward. I mean, they're pretty easy to kill, but you can get overwhelmed by them. But it's always worth making sure what you've got. If you've got a hammer burst drone, if you've got more difficult enemies or tougher enemies, because the enemies look so similar in this game, you can kind of get caught off guard with it. I tend to find the snipers a little bit easier because their guns are longer, but it's always worth slowing yourself down and just hovering a mouse or your controller icon over them, just so that you can see which one what you're actually shooting at and aim and set up your strategy effectively. Now, there's quite a lot of things in this video. I appreciate that. I hope that a lot of them give you some support. I'll be doing some videos on individual enemy strategies. I'll be doing some videos on individual hero strategies and some videos on the different classes, which probably I might overlap into the hero one because essentially they're all the same. So if you like the video, please give it a like and please follow the channel. I'll be giving a lot of support on this. If you want to know anything specific, then I'm happy to make a video on it, and just leave me a message in the comments. Cheers for watching.